Hey there, it's been a nice laid back Sunday. Got to go to Mass at my home parish this morning. And of course, any day that I receive Jesus is tied for the greatest day of my life with all the other days that I've received communion. Then later, I went with my parents to have a nice birthday lunch with my grandma. She's in great spirits, even though she's still recovering from her surgery, so that was nice. Then my parents dropped me back on their way home to this place here where my truck is parked. After I got back here, I felt this somber emptiness, and I've been trying to discern what God is trying to tell me through that. And I don't think He's telling me to quit trucking, and it's definitely still too early to discern what God wants me to do next, if He wants me to stay in trucking or do something else in the near future. Usually once I actually get back to work, those feelings go away. It's not the first time I felt like this. But it is something I need to take into account as I continue to discern God's will in my life. Got a mid-morning live load appointment tomorrow, so I can't start as early as I would like. The good thing about that is that I'll have plenty of time to sleep. But before I do that, I'll take some time to continue on with my life story. So last night I talked about the pivotal moment of my conversion and how I went through a phase of scrupulosity in the months immediately following that moment. So then in the spring of my sophomore year, I got involved with Drexel's Catholic campus ministry. I hadn't previously joined it because it was mostly defunct up until then due to a couple years of poor leadership. Being in Drexel Newman and talking about my faith with everyone there helped me to break out of my scrupulosity phase. Most of the credit for that goes to our amazing campus minister, Mike Chavanes. He was literally the most helpful campus minister I could have asked for during my years at Drexel. The emphasis I just put on the word literally is an inside joke that I may or may not explain to you all in the future. As I was saying, Drexel Newman helped me to transform my faith from a rigid, fearful observance of church teachings into a loving, personal relationship with God. The next big milestone in my faith journey came in the summer between my third and fourth years of college. I did a 5-year college program that included 3 internships of 6 months each, which Drexel calls co-ops, so that's why I use the terminology third and fourth years. Drexel refers to that third year out of 5 between sophomore and junior year as pre-junior year. At the beginning of that summer, I started dating an awesome young lady, and we seemed to be a good match for each other. I had dated a couple other girls since my big moment of conversion, but nothing came of it. Now, up until then, I had always thought that I couldn't handle lifelong celibacy. I used to tell myself, I'll start discerning the priesthood if I'm still hopelessly single at 25. But until then, I didn't want to assume that I'd never find a good potential wife. But once this relationship took off, I knew I needed to give the vocational discernment question some serious thought right away, because I cared about my girlfriend's emotions, and I knew she'd be really hurt if we grew more emotionally attached to each other, only for me to leave her for the seminary later. So I filled out the vocation survey on the Archdiocese of Philadelphia's vocation website, and a couple weeks later I had my first meeting with the vocation director. He gave me a book to read, called To Save 1,000 Souls by Father Brett Brannon. I don't normally get excited about books, but this book drew me in right away, and I read the whole thing as fast as I could. I hardly knew the first thing about proper vocational discernment before I read To Save 1,000 Souls. I hadn't wanted to think about it until then because I was determined to get married. I didn't even understand at that time that marriage is a vocation that should be discerned in much the same way as priesthood or religious life. Reading this book totally changed my outlook on life. It taught me that God has a particular vocation in mind for each of us before He even creates us. And the goal of discernment is to listen to God calling us to the vocation He most wants us to choose, because that's the vocation in which we'll be able to do the greatest good for God's glory. But even if we choose a different vocation, no matter how prayerfully we may or may not have discerned it, He'll stay by our side through everything because He loves us that much. He honors the free will He gave us, and He'll work with us to make the greatest good out of whatever vocation we choose. I had never thought about the choice between marriage and priesthood this way before, but as soon as I read it, I knew in my heart that I needed to discern my vocation with this mindset. My girlfriend and I accepted that dating wasn't the right thing to do at that time, but we remain very close friends to this day. So I went from planning my future based on what I thought were the most desirable but not too selfish things I could possibly achieve, to seeking to unite myself and my will to God's will, trusting that I would find the greatest joy saying yes to anything God asks of me, no matter how much suffering it might entail. But it wasn't like I instantly became the best discerner I could be after reading the book. For one thing, I still wasn't open to every possibility. I felt very at ease about priestly celibacy after reading the book, but I still wasn't open to religious life because I didn't think I could handle the loss of personal freedom it would entail, particularly the vow of poverty, not being allowed to own any private property except what my religious order would allow its brothers to own. I also thought that many of my gifts and talents would go to waste if I joined a religious order because I thought I would spend way more time in mandatory daily prayer than I'd spend doing ministry work. Now, that may be the case with certain orders, but every order has its own unique charism, its own prayer and ministry lifestyle. Many of them are very active in ministry. They're not all monastic. But for the time being, I was only open to marriage or diocesan priesthood. That is, becoming a priest for a particular geographical area that the church calls a diocese. And the book got me so attracted to the thought of becoming a diocesan priest that I quickly jumped to the conclusion that this must be what God is calling me to do. I'll continue on with my life story the next time I get a chance. Probably not tomorrow, because it's going to be a long day on the road after I get loaded. I may have trouble finding a place to park for the night if my evening pickup location doesn't allow me to park there, because by the time I pick up my load there, all the truck stops are probably going to be full. So, as always, please keep me in your prayers, and I will keep you in mine. God bless.